Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a great week, safe week. I finished reading the Upanishads this afternoon, and I really enjoyed this text. It's firmly a religious text. It's a religious text for believing Hindus, but it's also in that form of that aspect of like wisdom literature across the world. And I say that without trying to be pretentious at all. But writing that exists around how are we thinking about ourselves, how are we thinking about ourselves in relation to to God or to a creator, to a power higher than ourselves. How are we thinking about ourselves in relation to others, in relation to the world, the aspects of the world that we like, the aspects of the world that we dislike, the aspects of ourselves that we like or dislike. And that's kind of what I mean by that idea of like wisdom literature. And this is translated by Juan Mascaró. It is a selection of the Upanishads, not the full sequence. It's about there's 40 pages of introduction and translation, and then about 100 pages of text after that. But it's very rewarding. It's written in a way that is poetic, but also there are parables that pop up. There are sort of metaphors or analogies that are quite effective. They're very thought provoking and I think effective overall. It's written as a I don't know that the word continuation. It's deeply informed by the Vedas. They exist. The Vedas predate the Upanishads, which then delve into less around like external religious form, but more around again like how are we thinking about this? What does this mean in terms of our thought patterns and our attitudes? And of course those affect our actions, but it's not all of these actions. More all of these mindsets, and those will affect your actions. So I want to read a couple of passages from these because I really did enjoy them, and I think Mascaró is a strong translator. He also translated the Bhagavad Gita for Penguin Classics, and I think he did a great job. So let's jump into these, and then I'll talk about a couple of other texts real quick. So it's organized not in chronological order, but with the Isa Upanishad first, which is sort of like almost an introductory hymn or prayer, I would say. And then it goes through different Upanishads and then ends with what are some of the oldest Upanishads, but are also some of the most full Upanishads. So here we go. Behold the universe and the glory of God, and all that lives and moves on earth. Leaving the transient, find joy in the eternal. Set not your heart on another's possession. Working thus, a man may wish for a life of 100 years. Only actions done in God bind not the soul of man. And so it starts that way. And it continues, there are demon-haunted worlds, regions of utter darkness. Whoever in life denies the spirit falls into that darkness of death. The spirit without moving is swifter than the mind. The senses cannot reach him. He is ever beyond them. Standing still, he overtakes those who run. To the ocean of his being, the spirit of life leads the streams of action. And so it continues on, and I kind of want to go to what is the end. May life go to immortal life, and the body go to ashes. Om. O my soul, remember past strivings, remember. O my soul, remember past strivings, remember. By the path of good lead us to final bliss. O fire divine, thou God who knowest all ways, deliver us from wandering evil. Prayers and adoration we offer unto thee. And so we have sort of this introduction, and then what we find is a different, form throughout much of the rest of the text. And so we have things such as, it is the spirit of man who sees, hears, feels, perfumes, touches and tastes, thinks and acts, and has all consciousness. And the spirit of man finds peace in the Spirit supreme and eternal. And so we have these ideas where some of them are in the form of almost like dialogues, and it's not a dramatic narrative dialogue. It's more of a dialogue of the teacher imparting ideas to a student. And we then sort of take on that form as, students within the text. Another one goes, have you asked for that knowledge whereby what is not heard is heard, what is not thought is thought, and what is not known is known? What is that knowledge, Father? Asked Sevatakitu. Just as by knowing a lump of clay, my son, all that is clay can be known, since any differences are only words and the reality is clay. Just as by knowing a piece of gold, all that is gold can be known, since any differences are only words and the reality is gold. And so that's, we see sort of in that dialogue form where there are these thought problems, these examples for the the person in the Upanishad to contemplate, but also the reader to contemplate. And then another one with it is not for the love of a wife that a wife is dear, but for the love of the soul in the wife that a wife is dear. It is not for the love of children that children are dear, but the love of the soul in children that children are dear. And this goes on as a very long sequence, where it's identifying, it is not for the love of the all that the all is dear, but for the love of the soul in the all that the all is dear. And so you have a lot of like those types of statements. There's a one where a character wants to know a person wants to know something and say, okay, go put this piece of salt in this, water. And then they come back the next day and, okay, take the salt out of it. And they can't, of course, bring it back because the salt's dissolved. They go, okay, but taste the water. Is the salt in the water? Yes, but it can't be like recollected into one constituent piece. And so there's like those types of thinking throughout it. And so again, it was very enjoyable to read. I enjoy like dipping into and exploring like different cultures, different aspects of the world. And so this was a great introduction to that. Of course, it's not the full Upanishads. It neglects, very much like the historical context for many of these. It doesn't go into like those aspects of what's going on. It was pulling out more those specific, like wisdom or philosophical or spiritual, kind of pick your term, aspects within the Upanishads. But I thought it was very effective. I definitely enjoyed it. It is, of course, deeply informed by the Vedas or the Rig Veda, and Penguin Classics is a great version of the Rig Veda. Mascaro's Bhagavad Gita, I think, is highly effective and really fits in well with sort of the spirit of the Upanishads. I can see how the same translator, what that translator found in the Bhagavad Gita is also what that translator is finding in the Upanishads and sharing with, in his translation. And then another text from sort of that same culture that I think is great is the Speaking of Siva book, which is a whole section of like hymns and poems. It's just absolutely glorious. In terms of like, comparable texts within other cultures, I was reminded in aspects of certain parts of like Ecclesiastes or Habakkuk, I was reminded a little bit, although it's a very different comparison, but I was reminded a little bit of sort of the way Sufi poets relate to the Quran. And then the Modern Library does a fantastic book called The Essential Writings of Christian Mysticism with people like St. John of the Cross or St. Theresa of Avila, who really, have minds that operate in the same way. And so this was another text where I was like grabbing it down. I was kind of reading through here Theresa of Avila's life. And so just, finding, the Song of Songs was one that they're commenting on. And so it's just really, that type of thinking is a specific mode of thinking. And it's one I like to engage with in my own thinking. So that was the Upanishads, and I'm glad I read them. I highly recommend it. It doesn't take you could easily read this in probably about 1 or 2 sittings, or kind of spend some time, one a day for 2 weeks. So let me know what you think. I hope you're having a great week. Thanks again.